morning. Welcome to Overview and Scrutiny Committee Extraordinary Meeting on Monday the 15th of December 2025. So, hey, I'm looking well today. Oh dear. Yes, definitely. Anyway, welcome to today's meeting. I'll do the usual preamble. There are no planned fire alarms scheduled at this time, so if the fire alarm should go off, please make your way out to the building via the nearest fire exit to the car park beside the Windmill Public House. And obviously the usual blurb around microphones. Yes, they are a bit sensitive, and if we can have them as close to you as possible so we can hear. You know, I'm just as guilty as anybody else with a microphone, so it might be a blessing that you don't hear me, but can you indicate if you can't hear me properly, and I'll try and do the same, members, if I can't hear you. So thank you for that. Thank you, Howard. First item on the agenda is apologies, please.
Yes, good morning, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Littlewood this morning, for whom Darren Pemberton is substituting, and we have apologies from Councillor Alcock, for whom Jenny Fradgley is substituting.
Councillor Rolfe, please. Yep.
Chair, have we heard from Councillor Henshaw-Seraphin?
Yes, I'll follow up with him, make sure we've got his apologies for this meeting, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Councillor Rolfe. Councillor Fradgley. Nice to see you again. Long time since your last meeting. Good. Item 2, disclosures of interest. Any items? Councillor Pemberton, please.
Just that I sit on the advisory group around the local plan, so I don't think it's a prejudicial or anything like that, but it's probably just for clarity and for transparency, just to note that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, because somebody will say, oh, Darren Pemberton's on that group, why hasn't he mentioned it? So, stitch in time. Thank you. Councillor Keithley, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crump. Yeah, I'm also on that South West Local Plan Advisory Group, just to be clear.
Sorry, but I was going to call you Councillor Stewart then.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm on the advisory panel, group, whatever we call it.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Chair's brief. I've not been notified of any additional matters, so we'll move on quickly for that one. Public participation. Item 4, none received. And item number 5, the main point of the agenda today, is the joint cabinet committee meeting, actually, on the 18th of December. We've got Councillor Coucher and Mr. Careford and Mr. Stephen Stray, who's joining us online. So, Mr. Careford, can we go over to you to give us a synopsis and start this one off for us, please?
Super. Morning, members. So there's just one report for the Joint Committee, which is to do with the timetable for preparing the South Yorkshire Local Plan. Aside from the fact that councils are obliged to have a local plan and keep it up to date, we're also obliged to prepare that in accordance with the published timetable. The current timetable, so it's on the South Yorkshire Local Plan website and in our local development schemes. We haven't hit that timetable. We're about 3 months behind where we thought we'd be. In terms of where we are in that process, the next stage is what's called Regulation 19, which is the publication stage, essentially the draft version of the South Yorkshire Local Plan. And then we submit that to the government for examination. We had expected that we would be out to that consultation around about now, or very early in the new year. We haven't hit that milestone, so we've revised our timetable. We think we'll do that by June next year. We had built in some flexibility, some wiggle room into that the previous timetable. So we're not obviously overly concerned that we won't hit the submission by the end of the year, although obviously it does make things much tighter than they would have been previously had we been consulting now. The reason the December deadline is so important is it's fixed. The government have set that deadline for any plans that want to be submitted under the current planning system, plan making system. That is the deadline by which we must submit those plans. They are introducing a new planning system, so yeah, and that's one of the, I suppose, the alternatives. If we don't hit that deadline, then we'll have to use that new system. The risk with that, though, is that it could take another 2 to 3 years delay whilst we now navigate the requirements of that new system. So we are committed to submitting the South Yorkshire Local Plan by December in accordance with that timetable. But as I say, we do just need to revise the current timetable to make sure we're doing it in accordance with that published one. So that's the report in a nutshell. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Rolfe, please.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, for the sake of clarity and transparency, why the chairs of the advisory group are not invited to the Joint Cabinet Committee on Thursday. They have been obviously involved right from the very start, and shouldn't they be, is my question, really.
I think it's to do with the terms of reference of that group. I know they've certainly been welcomed on an informal basis and asked to contribute by the chair. So I see no reason why they can't. But yes, I think we do need to look at the terms of reference on that point. But so it's not, I suppose, directly relevant to the report.
Do you want to follow up, Councillor Rolfe?
Follow up. So can they please be invited? I don't know the process, but shouldn't they be invited?
Want to come in, please?
Yeah, as Mr Careford said, the terms of reference for the group are fixed, and because it's a joint committee between us and Warwick, we would need to sort of agree that with them. We've certainly, there's a very close relationship between the joint committee and the advisory group, so I'm happy to take that away and talk to the monitoring officer about how we could take that. Well, it would have to be both monitoring officers about how we could potentially take that forward.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Keithley next, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I've now got 2 points, actually. Just picking up on that comment there from Tony. The Joint Cabinet Committee on the 12th of December 2024, the minutes are actually in the pack, advised that Councillor Rock, as the Joint Chair, was actually invited at the invitation of the Chair on that particular, at that particular meeting. So it would seem strange that perhaps that shouldn't continue. Anyway, my question, John, please, if that's okay. You said the original submission was going to be, or originally planned for September 2026, giving some wiggle room because we knew that the deadline for this particular process as it stands is the end of the year. So you've moved the publication back from September to December. But in fact, what I notice is that the publication of the Reg 19 version of the plan has actually moved back almost 6 months, because you were going to do it in December, now you're going to do it in May. So something's going to squeeze as a result of that. And I just really wanted to better understand the publication date in May, perhaps a bit more accurate. I'd like to know whether or not the public consultation has to be 8 weeks, because you've got it running through June and July. They're quite long months, actually, they're 9 weeks. And where the pressure will come in the analysis of the responses to Reg 19 in order to meet the target date for December. Because what's actually happening, although you've moved it back September to December, you actually compressed the amount of time you've got available significantly by publishing for Reg 19 in May.
Yes, and you're right, Councillor. So it does put the pressure on dealing with the responses to the Regulation 19 consultation. It's a slightly different consultation from the other ones we undertake in that it's about the soundness of the plan. So there's a prescribed form that respondents have to use. So that yes, there are risks around that because we have compressed that time. As I say, we're confident we can still do it within that time period. The previous timetable, we were giving ourselves more scope and flexibility. But what it does mean, we do have to turn that consultation round quicker. We have to respond in terms of any changes we want to make to the plan following that consultation much quicker. But that's in essence where the pressure is coming. I suppose the alternative is to, if you like, stick with the current timetable and or bring the new timetable forward sooner, so we're consulting perhaps in the spring. The risk around that is that we have a Regulation 19 plan that isn't fully complete. And I think the risks are greater around that because then communities are not having the opportunity to comment on a fully drawn out plan. Now, we do have to cut our cloth, and there will be things that will never be ready for Reg 19. But I think, you know, to have the best chance of having a sound plan, it's important that the Reg 19 version is as robust as it can be.
Follow that up. Thank you, John. That's fine. Thanks for explaining that. I think what I would just suggest is that part of the problem the first time round with the consultation responses, you had so many of them. Some were online and some were through emails and stuff like that, and that actually took a long time to consolidate. I think if you're going to publish Reg 19 this late, then you're giving yourself not a lot of time to analyse those responses. I hear what you say about it being a different sort of response. We've got to make sure that the format is in such a way designed that it's going to be much, much faster to analyse those responses and make the tweaks to the plan swiftly so that you can still meet the deadline. I'm going to have another question in a minute, but I shall shut up for now. Thanks, John.
Never shut up, Councillor Keith. You can always come out with some good stuff. Mr. Kefford, do you want me to? And then I'll bring Mr. Strahan as well, if you want.
Well, just to come back to your other point, Councillor, about the 8 weeks consultation period. So it's a minimum of 6 weeks. That's a requirement, but traditionally we have done 8 weeks. Again, an opportunity to enable residents, parishes, businesses longer to digest the plan and have a longer period to comment. Now, members may feel that under circumstances that's overly generous, but again, there is some wiggle room around that.
I'll bring in Mr. Strahan. Stephen, do you want to come in, please?
Yes, thank you. And firstly, thank you for allowing me to be virtual because I've had flu last week. I didn't want to pass it on to the committee or any observers. I was going to just highlight the point that it's a 6-week formal process, and at this stage, with Regulation 19, the representations are considered against the 5 tests of soundness in the MPPF, and then they're dealt with in that way. And apart from what should be minor changes, such as factual changes and so on, then the representations are forwarded on to the planning inspectorate in a particularly prescribed format that they set out in their guidance. So it is a different approach to the previous versions of the plan. And I think that emphasises the comfort that with the right processes in place and learning from the process that we've had in place for this time round in terms of also procuring AI and that side of things, we should be in a much better position to be able to process the reps in a timely fashion. One of the biggest challenges this time around has been around evidence collection and the challenge around procure consultants, etc. And we shouldn't be in that position when we're doing the actual rep analysis for the planning inspectorate, because it's literally moving on and then identifying what they call matters, issues and questions that they'll be wanting to see at the examination, and led by their agenda, rather than it being something different to that in terms of back and forth on policy preparation, etc.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. I've got Councillor Wally Huggins next, please.
Yes, we all came to the, well, most of us, I think, around this table came to the briefing last week. It was a long meeting, but there were some pretty hefty stuff that the public, members of the public, is going to have to deal with and look at. And what I'm actually concerned about is that we are talking in terms of minimum requirement or of 6 weeks, but for many of our residents, what they are going to read when these sites are formally published, I can imagine for many residents that the balloon is going to go up, and there's going to be some deeply unhappy residents with what they're faced with. And if we are proposing and saying that we only have to give them 6 weeks, I'm really concerned that we don't give the image that, well, we'll give you 6 weeks because that's all we've got to do. They need time to digest what we're going, what this council is going to be proposing, and I'd like some reassurances that the 6 weeks will be the minimum and that we should still perhaps give them the 8 weeks that they need, because some residents groups, and they will be formed on the back of what they see, will be wanting to seek legal advice on what's put before them, and these things can't always be got within a 6-week time frame. So I suppose my messaging is I'm really concerned, and we mustn't diminish the time that residents have. And how can you ensure that there isn't slippage, and to make sure that residents do get adequate time to respond to these sites, one of which, well, many of which, but one in particular, it was very new to me, and I was astonished. I doubt that's the adjective that those residents affected will be using. Thank you.
Mr. Kerford, yeah?
Thank you. So it will be a minimum of 6 weeks, because it has to be a minimum of 6 weeks. So whether there's any wiggle room, we can look at that. I think the other point to note is there will be a lead-in period prior to the start of the consultation, because it has the plan will have to go through the joint committee. It will have to go through scrutiny committees at both councils. So at that point, the plan will be in the public domain, and parishes can certainly start to familiarise themselves with its content. What we do need to do in partnership with the advisory group is think about the strategy for engagement, how we start to communicate the content of the plan as early as we can. We just need to think about that carefully. So I haven't got any answers here now, but it will be on the agenda for the advisory group about how we ensure that communities and businesses and residents are understand what the plan is trying to do. Yeah, there will be some sites that communities may not have seen before, because that's the nature of the plan. It's an iterative process. You consult on X, and then you develop Y based on the feedback. But the general thrust of the plan has been if you like, set for a number of years, from the scoping consultation right through the issues, options to preferred options, of that sort of general pattern of development. So in that sense, that's been fixed, and the scale of the housing challenge particularly, it's not just about housing, it's about employment as well, and places, but the scale of the housing has also been known. So in that sense, the context is there, and this is one of refinement. But as I say, just to give members comfort, the advisory group will need to work with officers about how we ensure that we communicate and engage ready for the next consultation.
Follow-up, Councillor Wally Huggins.
So when exactly are these sites, particularly the new sites, going to be in the domain? What is the deadline for that actually going out? I'm sure it's written down here because I'm deeply uncomfortable by much of the South Warwickshire local plan and the effect it's going to have on residents and their well-being. So are they going to get this lovely news before Christmas, after Christmas, before Valentine's Day, on a lead up to Easter? When exactly? Because you have asked councillors to keep a confidence on something that I actually don't think is in the public's interest to keep a confidence on some of these sites.
So I don't have a specific date. It won't, other than it won't be this year. As I say, we need to carefully manage the engagement and communication in the new year, in the run-up to the consultation. I think that the key point, though, is the context. Is that having a plan has difficult decisions. We have difficult decisions to make in preparing that plan, but having a plan is far more beneficial than not having a plan. Not having a plan, you'll still get development. Arguably, you'll get more development. By having a plan and taking difficult decisions, you will at least manage and control where that development goes. You'll be able to maximise the benefits, mitigate the disbenefits, and ensure that that plan aligns with your council objectives. So it's not a free choice of not having a plan versus having a plan. You will still get development without a plan, and yes, there are difficult decisions we need to make as council, but it is in the best interests of all residents across South Warwickshire that we have a plan and we progress this plan as quickly as we can. I appreciate there has been some slippage. I understand the frustrations of members around that, and the report does set out why that slippage is occurring. But we're confident that we can still hit the target date for submission, which is December next year. Thank you.
I'll bring Councillor Coucher in, then you can have one more follow-up, Councillor Wiley-Hoggins, and then I'll move on to Councillor Johnston. So it's Councillor Coucher, Councillor Wiley-Hoggins, then Councillor Johnston, and then I've got quite a big list. Thank you. Councillor Coucher, please.
I just wanted to say that actually there are three things which are holding us up at the moment, and one of the reasons for the delay. We still have not had the Greenbelt review. We still have not had the strategic transport report, which is extremely important because quite a lot of these growth areas will have an effect on that. And the third area, which is absolutely crucial for the plan, is about the Stratford Western bypass proposal. We are desperately awaiting the consultant's report, which has to be with us this week. And then we have got some very, very significant lobbying national work to do in the first couple of months of next year with government, because we will need funding for that.
Can I just ask a very brief follow-up on the Stratford Western bypass? You hope to be with. Will there be any mention of it on the meeting on Thursday? If you've got it.
No, because I believe we're not going to get the report until Friday.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify that. So, right, Councillor Wiley-Hoggins, one more question, and then I'll bring in Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I'm deeply unhappy that you have stated that there is no specific date in mind for the publication of this for the residents. I get the delays, but they do deserve to be treated better than this. What specific? Surely the executive office can see where I'm coming from with this. We must. It's all very well having slippage, and by this time we need exact dates by which you are required to publish the site proposals to the public, so that they are forewarned and forearmed as to what they are potentially facing when this comes down the line. So to sit here and say that there is no specific date in mind is not, in my opinion, good enough for our residents, and we need a specific date beyond which then you need to come back to us. And yes, I quite understand why we need a South Warwickshire local plan, but that is not what I asked. I'm asking for specific dates when all of the residents across this district will know the proposals within this, and to say there isn't a specific date is not good enough. I'm actually telling Mr. Perks, I'm asking you, when is this going to be, please?
then I'll bring Mr. Strain as well.
Yeah, the
Yes,
sites
yes.
will be made available well in advance of the consultation, as Mr. Careford set out. There's a process that has to be gone through. Councillor Coucher has explained sort of why the final decision on those sites is influenced by things that we don't yet have. Residents will get at least the minimum consultation period. I think Mr. Careford suggested we're trying to extend that as much as we can, and we're trying to make sure that residents are aware of the proposals well in advance of that consultation period as we publish the scrutiny and through Cabinet. So residents will be aware of the proposals in advance of the consultation period in May or June. When we can fix that, we'll bring that forward as soon as we can. There is no, I'm not sensing any reluctance to share the information as soon as it's available, but we can't share what we don't have, and it's important that we share accurate information and not things that may or may not happen, because that will cause more disturbance for residents. But from what I'm hearing from my officers and Councillor Couch, the portfolio holders, will make that information available as soon as possible, and that'll be well in advance of May. So the window that, going to your first question, I would imagine your Easter date is more likely than your Valentine's Day date.
Thank you. Mr. Stray, I'll bring you in, and hopefully you're not coughing too much. You do look slightly poorly from where I can see, so thank you for being with us. And if you need to have a cough or have a drink, just put your hand up. Thank you.
I finished my antibiotics last night, so fingers crossed I'll be okay. Yeah, so just to explain, the actual appendix timetable indicates that the report and the associated plan would be going best on the current information that we have available in May through the committee processes, with the launch for the minimum of 6 weeks in very early June. So there is an indication of time. I don't think the actual programme of committee dates has been set yet, so they can't give a precise date, but that I think gives a good adequate steer here. And it's also important to remember that this report is about the timetabling of the preparation of the local plan that then feeds into the local development schemes, which then will be set out. And that's all part of the process for giving the public an indication of what the timetables will be. And then assuming that there's no further curveballs and we've got a risk assessment approach to the work in there, as referenced in the report, then we can manage that through to that sort of publication dates planned for the May, with then the consultation launch in the June. And a lot of this information, of course, in terms of the sites around strategic growth locations and new settlements, has already been in the public domain from the preferred options. And there's been an indication of there that there will be, obviously, as Mr. Careford explained, some variations and changes of work coming in, and that's part of the iterative process. So it was just to make those points, really.
Thank you for that. Yeah, he just managed to get through, so well done, Stephen. Councillor Johnston, please.
Thank you. I originally indicated, because I wanted to make the point that Councillor Keithley made about the advisory group. I'm also concerned about paragraph 5.2 on page 14, about some concern relating to the willingness of both councils to work together. And I would have thought the engagement of the advisory group and as many members as possible is an important way of taking that forward. I would like to ask Mr. Careford, there's a great deal we've made about headwinds, and I've forgotten what the analogy is about tackling a headwind. It may be something to do with a bow or something, but tacking, thank you. I just want to be quite confident that we'll be able to deal with those headwinds. And to go back to the point that Councillor Coucher made, reference in the report to the strategic transport assessment seems to be quite critical, and I believe that's to be produced by the County Council, and I just want some assurance that that will be completed within the timetable that we're setting.
Thank you, Mr. Careford.
Yes, and Councillor, I can give you as much assurance as I can that we will hit these new milestones. As I say, we did build some wiggle room into the previous timetable. There's always challenges around preparing a plan because there's so many different moving parts, and we're relying on so many different organisations to assist in that process. And what the report, I think it's para 1.4, sort of identifies is where some of those delays are occurring. I suppose arguably the reason the government are introducing the new planning system is to try and address some of those issues by, if you like, reducing the burden in terms of some of the evidence that's required to support a local plan. So yes, there are still challenges. There are risks, of course there are, but you know, we've got a timetable, we've got a fixed deadline, and I know all officers are working incredibly hard to make sure we hit that those deadlines because of the implications if we don't, and we're all committed to doing it. So if I can give you that reassurance, the benefits, whilst there are risks of working across two different councils, there are also benefits in terms of the pool of staff we've got. You know, doing a plan for two authorities doesn't double the workload in that sense. So we are throwing as much resource as we can to this. We're also liaising with various organisations, including the County Council, to ensure that they understand the priority that this plan has, because it is in nobody's interest not to have an up-to-date plan. So if I can give members that reassurance, hopefully I can. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Jenny Fredgley, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, with all the risks and the importance of meeting the deadline date, because the consequences of not meeting it are intense, to say the least, do you have enough resource to do this work?
Obviously, it's always nice to have more resource. I think it's... I'm going to say yes, and I'm sure colleagues might shout at me for that. But as I say, it's really some of the issues we're facing is resourcing in other organisations. So, for example, some of the consultants we're using, obviously, lots of councils are asking them to do work. Some of them are not able to increase their resource. So, on the whole, I'm happy with the resource we've got, but I'm not going to say never. And I think what we need to do is keep it under review. And as we move forward, if there are certain pinch points, whether we need to bring in a temporary resource, then we can look to do that. Obviously, council's given us a good budget to get the plan through. I think, you know, it's just working with Mr. Stray and identifying those pinch points to see if there does need to be a bit of an injection in resource to get us over the line. But I'm fairly confident we're okay as we are. Thank you.
Do you want to follow up, Councillor Fredgley?
Just to follow up that, I mean, it sounds good that you've actually, you're looking at pinch points and you will actually be seeking resource if that's needed. But I think the importance of this is such that if resource is needed, we should actually be finding the capacity to put that in, because we do not want to miss that end date.
Thank you, Councillor Fradgley, and thank you, Mr. Gafford, what you've said. As an executive, we're mindful of the need to sort of put resource into this, and as and where resource will solve it, then and we can find resource, we'll make that budget available and get to that. I just sort of point out though that the three things that are holding us back at the moment are all sort of external, waiting for the Greenbelt review, the bypass appraisal, and the strategic transport assessment, which I can't do with my own officers. I'm reliant on other parties, which is one of the issues of taking a plan forward. But if there's resource that we can put into this, we're actively working with these people to try and get that moved on. We're working with the County Council to see what resource we can put into that to get the answers that we need. So yes, we're very sort of open to that idea.
Yeah, I'll just, Councillor Fradgley asked very similar questions that I've put down. I'll just add on to that. Obviously, page 25, the report. I'm looking at it online because it's easier than looking at the A3. The two significant risks are 1 and 2. and at the moment they've gone from red to amber regarding staffing and resources and timetable. I think it's important that this is regularly reviewed, and we see, you know, us as Scrutiny Committee, we see regular updates to see how often that risk is changed. I know risk normally goes to audit and standards, but I think we've got a duty, a role to play as well. And I think it would be also good to see the costs, what costs are going through, and what potential additional costs are needed, cost, expenditure, finance, whatever phrase we want to use, to help progress it. And as Mr. Perks said, I think they're exploring the options of potentially assisting partners to try and make things run smoothly. I'm trying not to put words in your mouth there, Mr. Perks, so hopefully that summarised it. So I think that's quite important. And the risk register, you know, I think we do need to keep an eye on that, even though it's potentially somebody else's responsibility as well. So hopefully that's helpful. But I think we've got some points to summarise and take forward. Councillor Pemberton, you're next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a number of questions, so I'll, you know, if needs be, I'll break off and you can go around the table and come back to me. Principally because my original questions were around some of the aspects of the timetable, but I do want to pick up on this question of bringing information into the public domain at the earliest opportunity. And one of the lessons to be drawn from the last core strategy exercise was around public consultation. And the last time we did consultation in line with the rules. And this time we are doing public consultation in line with the rules. And there are two things about that. And Mr. Careford, you referenced the committee system. And for those of you who've read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, we run the risk of becoming the Vogon constructor fleet, which blows planet Earth apart. And before they all die, people complain, well, nobody told us. Well, there was a committee report done on Alpha Centauri. You didn't read it. And the risk for us is that we as an organisation are inward looking, managing processes in a world where since the last core strategy, people's desire and expectation of involvement and engagement has grown exponentially. So my plea would be, and it taps into this part of the question about that Councillor Johnston raised about, you know, can we keep everybody on side, which, and Councillor Keithley hopefully will back me up on this, the advisory group has been alive to that. But as far as the public are concerned, I think that we should work on the principle that once those three key pieces of external information are available and have been assimilated in a way that puts us in a position where we can start to get information out. For example, you know, going to parish councils, going to the ward members for particular settlements involved and say, this is what it means for you. Now you go and engage as well alongside us, but have a drumbeat of pre-engagement engagement, because it is absolutely clear that there will be a lot of pushback on, we've only got 8 weeks to respond to this. So I think we should do ourselves a favour. And I hear the Easter date, but I would hope that we could try to be more ambitious than that. And that is not a criticism. I understand the challenges, both for you as Head of Service and for Councillor Coucher as the portfolio holder guiding this thing through. But if we are to have the best opportunity of getting as much messaging out there as possible, people aren't really necessarily going to like what's in front of them, but to give them as much opportunity in almost a soft consultation or soft preamble before the 8 weeks, I think we should do so. And I make that as an observation and a plea, and perhaps looking for a commitment that would be where you would want to go with it, because I do absolutely think if we just stick to the timetable, residents don't get that, and there will be a world of pain for us all, and a lot of pushback and a lot of challenge. And I think we can get ahead of that. So I perhaps just would be interested in either Mr. Careford or Councillor Coucher's sort of views on that as a sort of Because I think also the will of the committee seems to be around trying to get as much into the public domain as early as possible. And then I've got some other questions, but I'll leave it just at that for the second.
You just repeated my question, really, about that matter. And to be frank, we didn't get any answers whatsoever from that about the public domain. And
Yeah, wrong sir.
I know we talked about the consultation when the Conservatives were in overcharge. Are we talking about it the last time, Darren? Is that what all of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy stuff was about? Can I just be very clear about that?
I don't know whether
Mr. Councillor Pemberton, you just come in briefly, then I'll bring...
I'm just observing there's a lesson learnt that following the process, the legal process is one thing, looking for engagement. We're all on the same page about that. And I think the advisory group itself has concerns about how we get as much out there, both for members, and there's the question about keeping both councils on side from a member's perspective, but also from the residents. So, yeah, I think everybody's pretty much on the same page. I'm just looking to try and see if we can drive something forward. You'd got a question, I'd got a proposition, so...
Yeah, Mr. Cathwood, please.
Yes, and just to be clear, certainly that's certainly my intention is that we, and if it wasn't clear from what I said earlier, I apologise. But yes, getting the information out in a managed way, in a timely way, is what we need to do. What I can't do is give you a date for when that's going to happen, sitting here now. But what we do need to do, because this is a joint plan, is work with the advisory group to map that out, to ensure that the information and the engagement with communities happens as early as it does. And that's the real key task for the advisory group in the early new year, about how we go through that process and working out the timescales around that. So yes, the principle of doing that fully behind, but I just can't give you the dates and the detail for that now, because it's still to be determined.
Can I bring you back in a bit, Councillor Whitehouse? I'm trying to get round to everybody who hasn't spoken first, and I have got you on the second round along with Councillor Keithley, Councillor Pemberton and myself, but I'm just trying to bring in people who haven't spoken first, and then you can come in on... I'll just say I think the government has got a defined process. I think Mr. Perks will... Do you want to come in, just make sure... I can understand the people's points, but if we have to follow the due process as well. So, just want to add something on that, Mr. Perks?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think Mr. Careford's covered a lot of it, and I think generally we are keen to commit to getting the information there as soon as possible, but cognizant of the risk that if we don't meet the December deadline, which is one that we can't move because it's government imposed, the consequences are likely to be worse for the public generally, because we will have, particularly in the absence of a 5-year housing land supply, further unregulated development that we won't plan for, and I think Councillor Couch has set out in his introduction, makes it more difficult to ensure that we've got appropriate infrastructure. So the consequence to the public of not meeting that deadline is significant. So we need to find the best way of using the time available to us to get the best result, which is perhaps not absolutely ideal, but the best that we can achieve in the situation we're in.
Councillor Couch, do you want to come in, and then I'll bring in Councillor Rice, please.
I think the assurances we can give today is that we will do it as soon as we can. Our difficulty at the moment is that we have a whole load of information, but it's incomplete. And what we don't want to do is to set a whole set of hairs running on things which, frankly, we can't implement. So that there is no point in disclosing information if actually all it's going to do is confuse the situation. What we need to do now is we've got to get ourselves a version of the plan which is potentially sound, which we can take forward, and that's what we need to consult on, and we're not there yet. So I think you can filibuster as long as you like, but frankly we are dependent very much on outside resources here. I know officers are putting as much pressure as they can on them to try and get things to us as soon as we possibly can, but until we've got clarity over transport, Western Bypass and Greenbelt,
we can't actually go out to talk to anybody. And the best estimate we have is that we might be in that position, or we should be in that position by Easter, and I think that's reasonable.
Thank you. Councillor Rice, I'm sure you won't be filibustering when you come in now, if you have a nice clear point. Thank you. And,
no, but I might continue the previous debate.
I've allowed a little leeway from members, so...
I really want to... we've heard about the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. My feeling is that the danger here is the mushroom principle. Do we know what the mushroom principle is? And that's what it feels like. I do appreciate what Councillor Coucher has just said, and I do understand that. But having said that, I do wonder the extent to which confidentiality is built into the legal process of plan creation. Because my first question, I have two. The first question is, to what extent is confidentiality built into the plan process? To what extent is this for the officer's convenience? The second question actually relates to new sites that have been introduced since the preferred sites were talked about just over a year ago. And of course, nobody has heard anything, if you're a resident, since December 2020. So what about those new sites that have been introduced without any public consultation that will go forward to a new public consultation which will only allow residents to comment on soundness? I would be very interested to learn what the inspector will make of a public consultation that didn't take place initially and then was totally artificial in the second instance and restricted to 8 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you for carefully indicating that you got two questions to me there. I was worried how you...
Yes, so the first is confidentiality.
Yep.
To what extent is that part of the process, the legal process? And the second question is, what is the inspector going to make of the introduction of new sites at the last minute, as residents will see it, without giving residents the opportunity to comment on those new sites, other than to, and I don't understand quite how this will be restricted, but it will be restricted only to soundness.
Yep, that's brilliant. Thank you for that. Mr. Careford or Mr. Strain, who wants to come in on that one?
So, yes, confidentiality isn't part of the soundness or the regulations, but it's part of the standard management of a very complex project. And it's, as Councillor Coucher's said, that there are things we're still testing and exploring, and what you can't do is put all of that detail into the public domain because it will cause confusion. Now, the principles are already out there because we've published scoping consultations and the issues options. So the broad thrust of where we're going is there, but the refinement, we have to go through a series of managed steps to ensure that the information that does go in the public domain is the information we're then going to run with. There will always be a point in any iterative process when you go from not having made a decision to of making a decision. So it's about managing the process so that we don't confuse the situation. That's the key point about the confidentiality. I'd just reiterate the point that sites or new policies are not being put in at the last minute. We're still partway through the plan making process. If they come in just prior to submission, then I accept that would be last minute, but consulting on information that has risen following a consultation, that is standard practice. And as I said before, you can't consult on everything because you just get in an endless consultation loop. You consult on a raft of proposals, suggestions are made in response to that consultation, and you take some of those forward. Because the risk is you just, as I say, you keep going around the same cycle. So again, you have to have an ability to move forward following a consultation. I think hopefully I've answered your question, councillors.
No, not really. Because new sites have been introduced that are not extensions of the original proposals, the preferred sites of last December. They are, to my mind, completely new sites about which the public has not had a chance to comment and will not be given a chance to comment, as I understand it, unless their comments are restricted to soundness. And that seems deeply unfair against a backdrop of confidentiality that has been extended by another 4 months.
I know Mr. Stramer's come in, but I think just to make the point, we're exploring and testing the new sites that are coming forward. Again, no decisions have been made, and the consultation, the Reg 19 consultation, is the opportunity for residents, communities to comment on any new information. The tests of soundness do allow comments to be made, but they've just got to be in the sense of, why is the plan, why do you consider the plan not to be sound, and what would you do to remedy it? And if your response to that is by removing site X, then so be it. So residents, just give members comfort, residents, communities will have the opportunity to thoroughly have their say on the plan. The test of soundness consultation it has a prescribed format in which that is done. But say no decisions have yet been made, and that's the work we're doing. We're testing all this information in readiness of the final version of the plan that then goes out to consultation next year. But I notice Mr. Stray wants to come.
Mr. Stray, do you want to come in?
But I think actually John's probably covered most of what I was going to say. What I was just going to add in is that apart from following, which describes, it's the national system of filtering down to get to a plan which actually then gets submitted. That is the process by which you do then the regulation, I think, consultation, and residents and whoever businesses, organisations can make their representations having regard to those tests of soundness. And the test of soundness, as Mr. Careford has said, is just the focus minds around emphasising why the plan isn't considered or is considered suitable, having a good justification, and that's really what that relates to. And in terms of management of the system, as John has said, it's about testing, and of course the councils have agreed for the SWLP advisory group process to have that political dimension for residents, to have that steer towards how that testing is undertaken. So that's the process has been recognised as a way to manage that testing and to hone down to the Reg 19 plan, which then will be submitted. And if we do it for 8 weeks, then that's above and beyond what is the regulatory requirements. And of course, we can explore the reasons, the ways in which that can be made known to the public. And of course, it will be starting to feed in from the committee process, but then mushroomed out, using the term earlier, into however that consultation then takes place, where we had high unprecedented responses last time. So the process seemed to work quite well from the level of response that we had, even if it's been challenging to manage. So it was just to emphasise those points, really.
Just adding on to Councillor Rice's point, would, as part of the consultation, would they be able to put something out to say, well, this is what we consulted on X. We've put new information has come to light regarding certain sites X, Y and Z with... Sorry, Councillor Judy, to be... Sorry, I thought you... put myself off there. Would you be able to identify the list of ones that have come forward? Well, we were consulted on X, and in the meantime, we've had some new information in, or new call for sites, and these are the additional sites we are likely to be including. So it's clear to members of the public, so they don't have to go through and reread the original consultation and identify those sites and compare them to the revised list of sites.
Yes, I think that's a decent suggestion, and I think it's as part of that engagement that the advisory group, we need to work with them about how we engage with communities. I think it's, yeah, there's certainly a role, I think, for some targeted communications, almost like a sort of summary to say these are the key changes, so it can really draw people's attention to what's different. There are risks around that, because what we might think as a key change or an important point, and someone might disagree and suggest we haven't covered everything. But yeah, I think that communication engagement will be really important, and I'm committed to doing that. I just can't give you the timescales and the detail around that. And certainly last time we had a number of specific sessions, both online and in person. So I would imagine something again along those sort of lines. But yeah, really being clear to enable residents to hone down as to what's changed, what's in the plan. I think the other point to note, it will be an easier consultation or document to go through, because it will just be the plan. In the earlier versions, you've got a much thicker document because you've got all the different iterations and options in it. This is the plan, so it'll be an easier document to read in that sense. But no, I think it's a good point that I'll certainly pick up with the colleagues in the advisory group.
Can you make a note of that, Howard? Chair made a good point. Councillor Rolfe, please. If you want to come in and make a good point as well, that would be helpful.
I'll try, Chair. So, at what point in this calendar, in this timetable, can we confidently ward off the horde of planning applications that are going to come through because we have no 5-year land supply? I mean, is this all a bit arbitrary anyway? Because are we just going to be, I mean, do we have any defence? At what point in this timetable do we have defence? And I have another question, which is, a few weeks ago, you and, I can't remember the officer's name, had a meeting with the three of us about our comments on south of Stratford, and we gave you a steer, we gave you an indication of what we would like to see, but that hasn't changed in what we saw last week. Are you going to take any... Basically, I was quite surprised not to see you not taking any notice of what we had suggested. I was just a bit surprised. So there's two questions. Is this all a bit of a kind of tick box exercise? Because are we going to find ourselves in a situation where in the next, because it is another 2 years, that we are going to have probably 5,000 to 10,000 houses come forward anyway from developers? I'm just asking the question.
On the point of your comments, I'll follow that up with officers. It may have been that we hadn't had the opportunity to update the information between the two sets of meetings, but I'll follow that point up. It's not a tick box exercise, but as I said earlier, we've got some very difficult decisions, and we don't have, a lot of choices around necessarily where some of that development's going to go. There are certain locations that will always come to the fore, and it's not a free choice in that sense. In respect to the 5-year supply, obviously the weight we can give the South Rockshire plan will increase when we get to Regulation 19, because that will be the point at which we publish our intended plan. So in that sense, that will be beneficial. But what we can't do is necessarily consider applications that aren't aligned with that negatively, because it's not got full weight of an adopted plan. So whilst we can give applications that correspond with the emerging South Rockshire local plan some weight, we can't do the reverse. It only works in one direction in that sense. But to say that it will have some weight as we move forward through the process.
If I may have a follow-up. So, I mean, obviously, a lot of what we saw last week at the workshop relied on certain infrastructure coming forward beforehand. My real concern, I mean, obviously I represent, and we do, the three of us represent South East Stratford, and there's a hell of a lot of potential houses going there and businesses going there. So, and it is all dependent on another crossing. I'm just trying to establish, I mean, I've already heard rumours of developers coming forward for a development in my ward. Have we got any ammunition? Do we have any ammunition at all? Can we say, no, we're not going to consider this because there isn't the road? Can we say that, and at what point can we say that? And if we can't say it, are we going to find ourselves in a situation, I mean, I go back to the days of Trinity Mead, where it was all done on a piecemeal, lots of different developers, and nothing really got done. You know, the original plan was to have a lovely community centre and a lovely shop. Nothing happened there because it was all done piecemeal. Birmingham Road was done piecemeal. I'm really concerned that certain aspects of south of Stratford and the rest of the district, but obviously I've got to be a little bit parochial here. I'm really concerned that some of this stuff is going to happen piecemeal, and we'll find ourselves with no infrastructure. 15, 20 years down the line, there won't be another road.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of what the point of having a plan is. It enables you to have take that coordinated approach, so that you do get the infrastructure. I'm not saying from day one, I'm not saying that because it's much more complicated than that. But by having a plan that's brought together all of the relevant infrastructure providers and stakeholders who are all on the same page, you will get a planned approach to development to ensure that the infrastructure that is necessary to support that development happens. It's when you don't have a plan that you have the piecemeal development, where you get the development just each red line, they look inwards and they don't think about the cumulative impacts. So that is the key point of having a plan. Regarding the highway situation in Stratford, we will be advised by the county councils, the highway authority. It will be for them to comment on current applications and to tell us whether there's highway capacity or not. So I can't give you a definitive answer. But what we're trying to do is come up with a solution where we address these issues. But I will make the point I made previously, that every site will generate harm. There will be harm from development. Of course there will be. I'm not going to suggest to yourselves or to residents that there will not be impacts. There will be. That it's whether there will be significant impacts. And that's what the planning system is trying to address, is minimise those significant impacts, so that we have development that is in the wider public interest, because the development's going to happen regardless. We're trying to minimise the negative impacts and maximise the benefits.
One more follow-up. look, I've got no problem with having a plan. I think it's a brilliant idea having a plan. But this plan is not going to be adopted for 2.5 years. Okay. So it's great that everybody's on the same page. We're all on the same page. We all want to plan. And you're talking about harm. Everything's going to have harm. But there'll be much more harm from the applications that are going to come forward in the next 2 years before it's adopted. And I just want some kind of answer to what people are saying to me, which is, you know, is it going to happen anyway, Kate? I'm just asking that question.
Well, as said, so that we can start to give the plan greater weight as once we've published the next version, next iteration of the plan. But we're going to have to deal with the applications that come before us. Legally, we have to deal with each on a case-by-case basis, but we are trying to manage that as best we can by working with stakeholders to ensure that we do have that sort of coordinated understanding of what those impacts are. But I can't give you a cast-iron guarantee, unfortunately, other than to say that we're trying to progress this plan as quickly as we can under the circumstances. When it is published for consultation, we can give it further weight, but it is in the context of the government's drive to deliver additional growth and housing, and unfortunately that's the context we are in.
Thank you. We'll be going round for a second round of questions. I'm just making sure those who haven't spoken have the opportunity to speak first rather than somebody come in before them on a second occasion. Wasn't a hint that, Kate, to pass in, but if you want to come in, I'm more than happy for you to come in there. Thank you.
So, following on from that question, when the Regulation 19 plan is published, will it hold any more weight in terms of planning applications, the planning applications that are coming through at the moment?
Yes, it will hold more weight than it currently does because it will be the publication version of the plan. It will be, if you like, the final draft. And as I said, we can use it positively for those applications that accord with it, but I don't think we could use it as a reason per se to necessarily refuse applications that don't accord with it at this stage. They need to be done on their own merits. We can consider it and take it into account, but it can't be the determining factor that just because a site falls out with what's proposed in the South Yorkshire local plan, that can't be the reason for refusal per se.
Right, I've got you down on the second round of questions. I have. So, Councillor Keithy, do you want to open the second round of questions for me, please?
Well, I'm going to say a couple of things to start with. The first thing, Chair, is I think we are straying massively from the revised timetable, which is what the purpose of this discussion was supposed to be. I think we should stick with that if we can. Otherwise, we're going to be here all day because people have got all sorts of generalised questions about planning applications and the 5-year housing land supply. I want to go back to what Councillor Pemberton said, actually, which was about the dates and the communications and the key messages, because I think that's the most important thing about this revised timetable. We had a long conversation at the advisory group about the timing of key messages and how difficult it was, given what you've heard from Mr. Careford about the complexity and the information that's flowing through, so there was no certainty. But what I think I would like you to take back to Joint Committee is a request for a better defined communications plan around this, with the timing and teasing out information and communicating that sometimes in a focused way to the communities most affected by the larger developments. Because I think when it comes to Reg 19, whether you give them 6 weeks or 8 weeks, I don't think it's going to make a lot of difference at that point. I think what matters is to make sure people understand the reason for the change in the timetable and the opportunity they do have to say something. And I think a comms plan needs to sit alongside this. And at the moment, we haven't really got that. So that's what I'd like to ask you to do.
I'm sure we've already got those in train, and we've got the additional comments about making sure what was the difference between what we were consulted on and how it's changed. So we've got some clarity that members of the public can review.
And also, just to add, in terms of the meetings, we've got OSC on the 4th of March, 8th of April, 27th of May. We've got Easter in the way, and we've got 2 bank holidays in May. So I'm guessing that we're going to need some additional extraordinary meetings, and the sooner we can put them into the diary, the better for people, because it's hitting a time when people are going to be planning to get away.
Yeah, again, reasonable points, Councillor Keithley. Obviously, but we're in the hands of the way the plan's going. Because there's no point having meetings if you've got nothing to bring forward, or officers can't tell us anything. So I accept your point. Yes, we are likely to be needing extraordinary meetings like we've having today, but we've got to make sure they're worth our time. And we've got something to talk about. And I think there's the other point we made was about communication on a regular basis, coming back to us as soon as there's any exemption reports that things have happened that we need to know about, and also I'd say about the cost as well. Just about your point about the timescale, I think we're talking about timescale today, but I think a lot of the points are relevant to it. Again, Councillor Rolfe's point about the 5-year housing land supply, how long, we're not going to have the plan for about, was it 2.5 years you mentioned, Councillor Rolfe? Yeah, so I think there are some slight points, and I think it would be remiss for us to forego the opportunity whilst we've got senior officers here and the portfolio holder to ask questions that we can report back to our residents, because I, and like Councillor Rolfe, I'm sure most of us here have been asked different questions about this. And I think, it's not coming from the opposition. I think the questions are coming from all parties, which I think this is laudable, and I think it's really good. So I think, whilst I might have given them some leeway, but I think it was done for valid, proper reasons, and I'm sure members of the public watching would be interested to hear about how it affects the 5-year housing and land supply, how the Section 19 regulation gives us a little bit more weight in dealing with planning applications, especially if they relate to South Warwickshire local plan. So I think it is all good, relevant context. So I think if we were going about really off track, I would have come back, but I took the decision, and I think most people, Councillor Rice asked some questions that were allied to it, but weren't actually, some of it wasn't to do with the timetable, but I thought, given the extra leeway, was pertinent. So I'll take on your point, but I'm going to have to disagree with you on this one. So the next person to speak is Councillor Wally Hoggins, please.
Thank you. First of all, can I just ask if we could have some terms of reference and the membership details for the Warwickshire Advisory Group and where we see the minutes for their meetings that they have, please. I think that would be really useful for us as Overview and Scrutiny Committee, as they seem to be very much part of this. I've got lots of things to say here, but they are relating to the time slippage. So we've had no reassurances, really, following on from what Councillor Rolfe said regarding the fact that surely if something's submitted sooner the better, in so much as sort of getting better, more rapid control of the 5-year housing land supply. I think that the points raised about that are relevant, and so the consequences of this time slippage are not good. The time slippage and the treatment of residents and the consequences for them as a result of this and the enforced confidentiality around it is, I'm afraid to say, a really poor reflection of this council currently. We're treating residents really badly, and that's why we're all sitting here, is we represent residents, and as Councillor Rice so eloquently put it, are we in fact treating them as mushrooms by this enforced confidentiality. And finally, I would just say this, as we've had some reference to books, perhaps all of us that think it is not acceptable to be treating residents who are going to be so badly affected by some of what is in this report that we saw last week. The consequences of that, I'm afraid, are severe. I'm deeply, deeply uncomfortable with this time slippage and the consequences. But my final reference as a book to counteract those previously made would be The Path to Power by Margaret Thatcher. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I think we'll emphasise the point on communication, timing, and actually the sooner we get further down the process, how it makes it better for our planning committees to work with a plan that's got more weight associated. Mr. Kerford, please.
I think, yeah, I understand members' frustrations, but I think it's wrong to suggest we're treating members, residents badly. We're not. We are doing our utmost to get a sound plan in place. That's the critical point. Local plans are very complex documents with, as I said earlier, lots of moving parts. They are controversial, of course they are, but it's about planning for our district's needs for the future. We are trying to put that plan together in the best possible way we can. It does take time, and as was said earlier, there are times when we're still testing and exploring that content that we can't release all the full details. But as soon as we can, we will. We're not keeping things from residents for any other reason than just to manage that process and ensure the information they get is the right information and is the most appropriate information, and we have a sound plan at the end of the day. So I just want to make the point that I don't think we're treating residents badly. We are trying to manage a complex process and ultimately get a local plan that is sound and then benefits all residents across the district. But that is not to say there will not be difficult decisions and there will be things that residents don't like in it. Of course there will be. But for the good of the whole district, it will be the right solution, the right plan to steer development right up to 2050. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I know, yeah, you're right, it's a fine balance. And I think sometimes when there isn't any information, some people do make up their own version and then promulgate that. So I think we have to be
Chair, could I ask you, do you feel that the council and the officers are treating residents like mushrooms, as was suggested by Councillor Wally Huggins?
And by Councillor Rice. Thank you.
I think we've made the comment. It's not what I believe. I think, yeah, I think
you should address the question, Chair.
Could you repeat the question then, please?
I asked you whether or not you agreed that you think the council and officers are treating residents like mushrooms, as suggested by Councillor Wally Hoggins.
And by Councillor Rice.
Because you've heard a response
Excuse me, no,
from
come on.
Mr. Kerford.
Thank you. Right, okay. Can we have one person speaking at a time? Thank you. I always think, when I'm chair of scrutiny, that the officers treat me with the respect and I value their opinions. I can't, I've got my influence. I'm chair of scrutiny. I can't regulate the opinions of committee. I can suggest if they want to rephrase the words, rephrase the comments they've made. But to be honest, it's not my decision. It's not my comment. I'm chair of the scrutiny committee, and I try and get down to what matters the most to residents. And it's the basic bottom line on this is communication. Whether I would have expressed it in those details, I doubt whether I would have done. But I think we're taken away from the subject is that we do need to communicate effectively. And that's why we've slightly gone off the timeline subject, but we've had lots of issues that have come out that I think are pertinent to the residents. So let's get back on an even keel, please. I'm even suggesting we have a break for 5 minutes. We've been going on for about an hour and nearly an hour and a half. We have got quite a few questions, and if Mr. Kerford and the officers and Councillor Cacher would bear with us for 5 minutes, I think it would be good if we had the coffee and the stretch of legs. Members happy with that? Yeah. Thank you. I did slightly tell you a slight fib on the way to do with a fire alarm, because I thought we'd be finished by 12 o'clock. But if we're still going at 12 o'clock... Oh.
The test. Yeah, we got an email this morning saying... Oh, okay, sorry, that's unnecessary. I didn't know that.
Okay, I've just been thrown the hospital pass by Mr. Perks. There isn't a fire alarm at 12, so don't worry about it. Just ignore that last 30 seconds about fire alarms. But I'm glad to see everybody's on the toes and we're all ready. So, next question is from Councillor Pemberton, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got some questions on the timetable, trying to keep to, as Councillor Keithley says, what we're trying to discuss here. But with your indulgence, I've got a couple of comments, the second of which hopefully might help Councillor Rice around the confidentiality question and how all of that has come about. My first observation would be to say that a filibuster is a mechanism by way of talking a matter through with the idea of frustrating the matter or defeating a piece of legislation. And I would suggest that that is not what is going on here. It is the role of overview and scrutiny to ask challenging questions. As questions are asked by members, that triggers other thoughts off in members' mind, which may ask a variation on a question in a way to try and tease other information out. And having sat where the portfolio holder has sat, it can be challenging at times. But as a critical friend, it is a right and proper function of this committee to ask the questions that it feels need asking on behalf of members and on behalf of residents to ensure that in whatever subject we get the best possible outcomes. And certainly for this member, the idea of the questioning is to ensure that, and I can't believe that's how I just described myself, that we do get the best possible outcome. On the question of
Councillor Pemberton, please, can I just beg your indulgence? Can members please still, unless it's a matter of urgent business, can I stick to the table, please? We had started the meeting. We've had a break to discuss things. So I'd rather people did stay at the table unless they, have to go for an emergency. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've said my piece about filibustering, and I think that we are actually doing our job here rather than anything else. On the question of confidentiality, I played a prominent role in the establishment and the terms of reference and the operation of the advisory group when I held the portfolio holder's place for planning and policy development before the change of administration. And one of the key things was that, as John Careford has said, plans are controversial things. And it was felt that there needed to be a safe space where members could come together and, in essence, for some of us to take one for the team and have the difficult conversations and to talk openly, and for officers to talk openly, to discuss things that it might be more difficult to discuss with other pressures. And I think that there was a feeling at the time across both councils that there was a useful period where that should operate, and that the group would issue key messages at the end of each meeting. It is fair to say that for some months, and I think Councillor Keithley will confirm this, there has been a debate as to whether that level of confidentiality remains appropriate as it gone past its sell-by date. And I know, were he here, certainly the Stratford chair would be making the same points, that he certainly has the feeling that we need to be moving. Now we've had that safe space kind of conversations at the beginning, that we actually get more into the public domain. But I think there was a place and a time to enable people to be able to have the conversations that not everybody could have, and to do that difficult discussion. On the timetable itself, trying to get back to the agenda, as Councillor Coucher and the Head of Service rightly outline, there are 3 key pieces of evidence that are still required. This is an A3 spreadsheet, but I'm struggling to see, and please, if I've missed it because it's small print, I can't see, as far as the risk register is concerned, delays and or not getting those pieces of strategic information identified as an individual risk. If it's covered somewhere else, it would be helpful to know. But particularly given the track record of the county around the South West Relief Road, as it was once known, and now the bypass, in terms of bringing a final position to the table. I'm struggling to see where we've got that. If I've missed it, apologies. If it's not in there, I would ask that we do need a line in there that says it's a risk, particularly the county bit. I'm more confident about the landscape and the Greenbelt reviews, which are being conducted by professional organisations, which will be delivering. But I think, and the advisory group, I think, has shared concerns that the county's element to it is a risk. So if Mr. Careford could point me to where it is in the sort of risk register, or if not, could we have it added into the risk register? That's my sort of first question.
Stephen or John, please? Do you want to come in on that one, Stephen, please?
Yeah, quite happy to. So, yeah, and apologies, it's a small print. It's the challenge of things being done in Excel and how they translate into model gov, etc., that side of things. I think it's been, rather than being specifically referenced as in a challenge, it's referenced in a slightly more general sense. So if it's thought that it would be helpful to flag up particular aspects of that, obviously that can be brought in as commentary. The risk register itself, which has been drawn up between both district councils using the right district template, identifies challenges around evidence to delays and around that side of things, and what steps are being put in to mitigate that against that side of things. And part of that, obviously, is where we've got joint working with key bodies that we have to work with, such as the county or national highways, for example, that they feed into that process. So it will be picked up in those side of things. But if it's not felt that it's sufficiently separated out as to be a key point, that's obviously something that we can feed back.
Through you, Chair, I'm just looking down the list. I can't see anything that talks about outside bodies at all. And again, I'm just trying to squint at it. So apologies, Stephen, if I've missed it. Again, it might be nuanced in there, and I think the Deputy Chief Exec wants to come in.
Yeah, I think the general point is picked up at risk 11, but it mentions consultants rather than expressly outside bodies. I think there could be some clarification around that, so we'll take that away and update the wording. Yeah.
And my sort of follow-up question is, and again, this focus is more on well, let's talk about externals, those external pieces, rather than necessarily focusing on the county, because you may feel not comfortable about that. At what point do we get to a position where the lack of those pieces of information risks holding the timetable below the waterline?
I think it will depend on the nature of any work that's missing, and we have to take a view as to whether we can run with what we've got. So it is under constant review, and we will keep it under constant review. But I don't think you can say categorically. I think it will depend on the nature of the particular study, if we can utilise draft material, and we have a retained barrister who's advising us on the preparation of the plan, as well as working with the Planning Advisory Service. So yeah, we are keeping it under review, so we do need to be mindful of the fact there will be, if information is not forthcoming, even with allowing extensions, then yeah, we need to think about how we take that forward, and if there's any contractual issues that we can, or contractual obligations we can impose upon a particular consultancy to try and remedy the situation. But I think the key point is we are keeping it under review. We're alive to the issue. We've been alive to it for a couple of months now. And it's really working with them to say, okay, what can you give us? What do we need to make sure we keep this timetable on track?
And I've got one final question.
Carry on,
Thank you,
please.
Chair. So, John, we've got a timetable in front of us. We've got a hard stop for December 26. What's the one thing out of all this that keeps you up all night? What's the one thing that makes you lose sleep and say, if we don't get this over the line? What's the key issue? What's the key thing that keeps you up at night about this?
Well, there are various things because it's a complex process. And I think there are various milestones. We have to hit the Regulation 19 milestone because otherwise we then run into the summer holidays. So it's various things around ensuring that we do get the consultants' reports and ensuring that we're able to go out on a fit and proper consultation version. And then it's making sure we have got the time to submit the plan and consider the responses in due course. So it is very challenging. There are lots of risks around this, but we are keeping going, and we're in a strong position to get there. Partners, stakeholders understand the pressures we're under. They get it, and we're working well together. We had built in some wriggle room within the timetable. So I'm confident we're going to hit the deadlines.
Chair, I'd just make the observation that taking back to Joint Committee and for OSC itself, I think we've been told that the key thing is getting to Reg 19 on time. So I think everything around, and certainly the advisory group, I think will be following on through this. It's about, from OSC's perspective alongside the advisory group, being close enough to understand as we go along whether we're on track to get to Reg 19 within the plan. And I think that's something that I would suggest you should be feeding back to the Joint Committee as a key issue.
So I think the points about the advisory group and the information as well come out is quite pertinent, and I'm sure we'll have a set of notes for me to reply to the Joint Committee on Thursday. So thank you for that. I've got Councillor Rice next, please.
Thank you. Yes, now I'm going to follow up on some remarks by Councillor Keithley and Councillor Pemberton, and actually, Chair, draw attention to something you said, if I heard you correctly.
Must have been good then.
I thought it was perhaps a little ill-informed, in the sense that you were talking about communications becoming available as and when. And that to me is, I paraphrase, Chair, but I think that was what I took from what you said. Councillor Keithley said we need a communications plan that runs alongside the timetable. And I'm going to formulate this into a question now, you'll be pleased to know. What professional communications advice have the planners received, and what professional communications advice will they be seeking in drawing up a communications plan to run in parallel with the timetable in front of us?
So we utilise both councils' communications teams in terms of the communication and preparing the plan. We're also liaising with the Planning Advisory Service. And this is one of the benefits of the advisory group, is that if members think we need to go further, if we need some external PR advice, then we can take that on board. And yeah, that's the benefit of having that member steer in the process, really.
Just for clarity, the advisory group has at different times flagged that the use of external comms agencies, and there has been some external comms work done. So I think just to give some comfort that the message is already there.
I take it from Mr. Careford's answer, though, that he probably doesn't think it's necessary from what he's just said.
I think there's a debate to be had.
Yeah, Mr. Perks, want to come in, please?
Yeah, I've taken a note from the previous debate that as the timescale tightens, the need for effective communications probably increases. So I've taken a note today as an action to sort of just sit with the team and make sure we have an effective communication plan, picking up on some of the points that have been raised around the table to make sure that the public have the most opportunity to be aware and engage with the Regulation 19 consultation as and when it's available. So be assured we'll take that forward, building on what we've already done.
So I'd just add to that as well, and I think you had slightly misparaphrased, but Councillor Riceborough won't make too big an issue of it. I think the point that Councillor Keithy raised earlier about some more extraordinary meetings is a pertinent one, and we have to take that into account, especially if there's more information becoming available as we proceed down the process. So that was my point about making sure we get the information as Scrutiny Committee at the earliest opportunity, and perhaps I didn't phrase it as eloquently as you did earlier. Right then, I've got Councillor Fradgley, I've got a question, then I've got Councillor Wally Hoggins.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask, what is the real reason or fundamental reason as to why the whole process appears to be so slow and hitting sort of a lateness button because of the importance? What is it that has actually slowed the whole process up? And if we identify that, is that then useful to actually cut out any slowness going forward? Because we've got, you know, two years in which you could get hit more problems and it slows down even further.
So the timetable after we submit is in the hands of the Planning Inspectorate, and what we've tried to do is give a reasonable time frame for that. If we can adopt before March 28, then we will. In terms of the timetable up to that point, it is driven by two things. One is the scope and breadth of the plan. And I've said this before, in some respects, the district benefits from having lots of options to consider. But the disbenefit of that is it does create a lot of work and there's lots of permutations. So preparing a plan does take a long time. A lot of the time is to do with the technical reports that have to be commissioned and undertaken, and a lot of the time the transport modelling in particular does take a long time. So what you've set out in para 1.4, I think it is the issues where some of those delays are occurring, where we're finding procurement's taken longer than we perhaps expected it to. The consultants are busy with other clients they've got. That work is taking longer. The government have changed various requirements. Talk about the green belt. So the work is having to be redone. And the fact that we've commissioned work and we've gone out to commission work, procure work, and we've had no interest from consultants because they're busy doing other things. So there's been a number of things that have delayed us, and we've tried to manage that and working out what do we need to get out to a Reg 19 consultation, and that's what we're focusing on. But unfortunately, we've not been able to keep the current timetable in doing so.
Brilliant. Thank you.
But we've learnt from that, so going forward over the next couple of years, we'll try to actually make sure that those don't actually delay still further.
Well, they shouldn't, because the steps in the plan process will have changed, so you shouldn't be commissioning much more technical evidence because we've done all that. We'll go into the examination stage, and to say that will be in the hands of the Planning Inspectorate. As I said earlier, the government are changing the system to reduce the evidential burden. We don't know what that looks like, and the point I've always made is, the government are looking at reinforcing the planning system with additional resources. It's not just local authority planners that need the resource, it's the statutory consultees, the county councils, the national highways, the Environment Agency. Often, for understandable reasons, that's where some of the delays are occurring. And I don't know what the government's got in store in that sense.
Yeah, I've got a question. We're likely to have some major changes to the NWPF in January. Well, unless the timetable slips, so we can use the timetable analogy there, Councillor Keithy. Is this new major changes to the NWPF, will you have implications for the plan? Yeah, potentially, like I think one of the things that's been brought about is building near train stations. That was one of the things. I just wondered whether you might have to redefine some of your areas of work to take that into account as well.
Yes, so we're expecting a new MPBF just before Christmas, which happened last year as well. So I think there are three areas that I'm expecting changes to be around. One is around the duty to cooperate. So that appears to be going as a requirement in the plan making process. We still need to address unmet needs, but if you like, the evidential test around it seems to be going, and that's beneficial. The second is a suite of national development management policies that I'm expecting to be published as well. So that will speed up the process if we want to go down that route and use national policies, because we won't need local ones. And then the third is, as you mentioned, Chair, the government have been talking around favouring development around railway stations, and we need to see what that looks like, how that impacts the plan. It may, if you like, supersede some aspects of the plan, because our plan, as members will be aware, has been driven, if that's the right word, by the rail network and trying to focus development in those sustainable locations. So in many respects, we're aligned on that already, but there could be some areas where we haven't been looking at, and the government are saying, well, actually, you should. So again, it's not going to delay us, because it can't delay us, but we will need to bear that in mind as we move forward.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Councillor Wally-Huggins, please.
Yes, can we go back to, and it's something that Councillor Couch referred to as well. At last week's briefing, you talked about the announcement regarding the new bypass. And when that announcement, you said that announcement would be before Christmas. So we're not expecting any details of that till Friday. So what are you still standing by the fact that there will be an announcement before Christmas, please? Because there are implications, are there not? Because if we do get the go-ahead for that or have the funding available, then it knocks out one particular contentious development on the plan. But you did say last week that there would be an announcement around it.
So, members, you'll be aware that we are sort of running sort of two scenarios, one with a bypass to Stratford-on-Avon town, one without. We're still finalising the work. That work is due to be finished this year. I don't know exactly what words we use, but yeah, it won't be an announcement before Christmas, but we'll have the conclusions hopefully before Christmas.
Councillor Coucher, do you want to come in, please?
Well, I think before Christmas, all we'll have is a potential scheme, and how much it's going to cost. Whether we're able to implement it or not is going to be another matter. I mean, I think this is the whole problem. We're in a dynamic situation here, and we're very much reliant on others. And that's going to be, in relation to the Western Bypass, it's going to be about lobbying government about whether there's any national finance that can come forward for that. We know that MPs of three parties are all lined up to speak on our behalf. And the County Council and ourselves obviously be pressing that case. But at the moment, we don't know how that's going to be received. But we need to have the evidence of what the road looks like and how much it's going to cost. And that's what we're hoping that we'll get on Friday.
Thank you. Councillor Passingham, please.
Will these reports be published? And if not immediately, are they likely to be published in the future?
They will be published. We just need to think about the process of doing that and the timetable for doing that. So I don't know the date for it. But again, it's taking out of courtesy through the South Yorkshire Advisory Group first and getting a steer from them about how we best disseminate that information.
Have you got another question, or was that the... Right. I've not got any other questions. So, no, I think we're getting some nods. Councillor Catch, would you like to sum up anything else? I did say you could have the opportunity right at the end. Just briefly, though. We don't want any filibustering, please.
No, I mean, I think there's two issues that have really come out from this today, and I think they're in accordance with what we're trying to do already. Timing is of the essence. We obviously clearly have a very complicated process here, but we know what the end date is, and we've got to work inside that. I think officers are fully cognizant of that, and we as members need to be supportive of them in terms of doing that work. Clearly, communication with the public is also extremely important. We've already, in the documents that have been released, demonstrated where the growth options potentially are, where the new settlements are, and where the other development potentially can be. So that's already out there. And also out there is the total number of houses and commercial development that we have to do. So a lot of that evidence is available at the moment. What we're obviously trying to do now to get to Regulation 19 stage is refine and crystallise the evidence on the best possible solutions. And this is where clearly confidentiality is important, because, as has already been said, we are testing a number of things. And we also have got some very crucial bits of evidence that we still don't have, and one which I think all residents in this district is very concerned about, which is transport, and particularly road capacity. That is absolutely crucial for us in terms of making sure that our plan will stick. Obviously, we are also under great pressure from the 5-year housing land supply, as Councillor Rolfe has indicated. So it is really important that we're bringing the robust proposals forward as soon as we possibly can, so that we can demonstrate in front of inspectors that we have considered options, and we have a clear way forward. So it is all coming together in many respects. But I think a communications plan will be extremely important. I think indications have been given that we're all trying to work towards getting all evidence together by Easter, and I know we'll all be putting pressure for that to happen. And then clearly we will have, hopefully, the maximum time for consultation before the summer close down. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's good, obviously, as Chair of Scrutiny, I should hopefully be there at the meeting on Thursday, all being well, the Joint Cabinet meeting, but it's good to hear that you as a member of that Joint Cabinet are hearing our concerns directly, and obviously we've got Councillor Coles and Councillor Junid there as well overhearing, which I think, for the most part, we've raised many pertinent questions. The big issue is around communication, and I think that's been taken on board. And the other point is that we have to do this, we have to meet the dates, because if we don't, the consequences could be far worse. As Mr. Careford always said, the consequences of not having a plan are far worse than having one that's not 100% accepted by all residents. There we are, I'm trying to be subtle on that one. So I've got no other points. Thank you for your attendance, and safe journey home. Thank you.